Hi! I want this video to be a small guide for those that have never played tabletop role-playing games before, but that are quite familiar with video games. Perhaps they are hardcore gamers. So in this case, I am going to be providing tips and advice on how to actually roleplay in a tabletop RPG session. This video could be considered an extension or continuation to my video where I talk about deprogramming players that have learned to play RPGs, tabletop RPGs in the incorrect way, and to engage into actual roleplay. Because this is beyond, there is a confusion that roleplaying is acting. I also did a video about that, the link will also be in the description, it's not the same thing. Okay, let's get started. When it comes to people that have played perhaps many computer RPGs, it's important to know that the beginning, the origins of video game RPGs is based, or they are based on inspiration provided by Dungeons and Dragons. You can see those old games, they are pretty much Dungeons and Dragons, but because they were quite primitive back then when compared to modern video games, it wasn't always easy to create that connection between the player and the game world. So you had some somewhat cumbersome mechanics, somewhat cumbersome user interface. You had to type a lot. You had to basically communicate with the computer. Oftentimes you had to input some codes and keys, some complex ways in which that allowed you to use your spells, to attack, use items. Like in Might and Magic, do you remember? You had to press, what was it, like C, and then the level of the spell, let's say 3, and then the number of the spell 6, and then that's how you used to cast spells back then. So yes, it was quite cumbersome. But later on, video games moved forward. Well, it's still a nice thing to play retro games every now and then, or modern video games in a retro style, just for the nostalgia or to experience some of the historical significance of how video games have progressed or moved forward into different ways. But later on, the interfaces were a bit more simple, to the point that today we just need to use our controller or our mouse or our keyboard to move our character to a certain place, and if you want to pick up something, especially with the ragdoll physics, you can pick up anything, corpses, you can pick up objects, anything. Absolutely. You can interact with everything in the game world. But there is some middle ground. I actually like that middle ground where you had these commands on screen. You know, kind of like Shadowgate, where you had like, I don't remember the exact, it's been a long time since I have played Shadowgate, but you had like look and use and talk, well, in that style. So you have those prompts or commands. For those of you that have never played that sort of style, you basically click on the look command or prompt to look at something on the screen. And if you want to use an item, you click use. If you want to talk to a non-player character, you click talk. And then you click the character that you wish to talk to. So it's kind of like that. Some things happen automatically, but when it comes to the more proactive aspects of those games, you are clicking on those commands and affecting something like, what was the name of this? King's Crown? The name includes the king word. But you know, it's kind of like Monkey Island. That's another example, but you have those kind of like adventure games that have a certain element of RPG to them as well. Not exactly, if you want to be a bit more specific, but kind of in that style. So when it comes to someone who has never played a tabletop RPG, but that has played many video games, just think of that interface as nothing, as if it just disappeared, it went away. You don't need to click on look to look at something. You don't need to click on talk to someone. You don't need to click on use to use an item, or fight, or magic, anything. You just do it. So, if you want to examine something, look at something, you can describe your character. I move closer to the edge of the building or the precipice or whatever, and I take a closer look at the gargoyle that is, the statue of the gargoyle that is perched on that zone or that section. Or maybe you want to examine an object. I walk towards that strange looking cube and I pick it up and I start to turn it around looking for some sort of marking or switch or anything that catches my attention. If you want to talk to someone, you just talk to the non-player character. If you are talking in third person, my character approaches the peasant and says, "Hello, good man, I am looking for the closest tavern," or you could say, I approach the peasant and I ask about the tavern, or I approach the peasant and I say, "Excuse me, I am looking for the nearest tavern. Could you direct me to that place, please?" So it's all about that directness. Destroying the user interface mindset, because tabletop role-playing games specialize in immersion. To this very day, and I think that it will never be possible, but to this day, there isn't a single video game that achieves the level of immersion that you experience in tabletop role-playing games, because they are powered by your imagination. And if you have a very powerful imagination that is enhanced or fostered or promoted or perpetuated by this direct interaction with the game world, then you will truly experience immersion. So, in fact, if we take into example or into account the modern video games, there is no controller either. You don't need to ask the game master, "Can I press the A button to talk to this non-player character? Can I move my joystick to move my character closer to the shack or the cottage?" It's all about that. Now, for those of you that are new to tabletop role-playing games, that is known as the mother may I having a conversation. That's the wrong way of playing tabletop role-playing games. There is simply no advantage to that. You will also find a link in the description where I talk about, it's the same video where I talk about confusing role-playing with acting. So definitely check that out. So I definitely encourage anyone who has only played video game RPGs, to give tabletop role-playing games a chance, a go, but with actual roleplay, because if you play it without that roleplay, you're going to get a very dull experience. You're not going to be playing a tabletop role-playing game, you're going to be having a mother may I conversation. So it's all about that, not allowing yourself to be crippled by the user interface mentality. There is no controller. The closest thing that you could find to a menu of sorts in a tabletop RPG is the character sheet, where you record your health levels or hit points, depending on the system, or the skill checks, or the abilities, powers, spells. That's what the character sheet is for. But aside from that, everything is handled through immersion, direct interaction with the game world. Don't ask questions. Can my character talk to this non-player character? Can my character use this tool? Just do it. Just like in a video game. Imagine how boring video games would be if you were constantly asking your Xbox or your PlayStation or the computer if you could press this button or click here or move this cursor or push the joystick. And that's why so many sessions in tabletop RPGs are so lackluster. They are very clumsy. They are not really tabletop RPG sessions. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support this channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.